That's the swing Peter Johnston hopes will take him to the top of the golf world. Although in the last year of a traineeship at the Sugar Valley Club, he's a triple club champion at Newcastle and is relishing the prospect of staking his PGA claims on familiar territory.
Local knowledge is a good advantage to have, but it's like you've still got to play good to win anything, you know. So it doesn't really matter where it is. If you play well, you've got a good chance of winning.
Your last crack at this tournament, you must be pretty determined to make a good showing though.
Yeah, I'm going to have a big go at this one.
To win, he'll have to overcome 144 of the country's best trainees, including Newcastle's Michael Jones, who sees the home turf advantage as a mixed blessing.
It's good to have it in Newcastle. There's a bit of extra pressure being the home trainee, but I'm really looking forward to having a go.
Regardless of how the locals fare, the tournament will be seen as a huge vote of confidence in the Newcastle course.
We really do believe that it's going to be a great test in terms of golf, and also we believe that there's a need for an event like this in Newcastle, something that's going to bring top golf to you to the city, and something for corporate citizens to get behind and support.
The tournament will be held over 4 days, beginning on the 5th of December. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
For almost 10 years, there's been talk of having electrically powered locomotives hauling coal wagons on the line between Newcastle and the Upper Hunter. After receiving the latest costing of hundreds of millions of dollars, the government decided 2 months ago to see if the private sector would be interested in the project. Of the 19 companies approached, only 4 responded, but declined to submit a proposal. At the time, 2 local groups, Port Waratah Coal Services and GavEng, had shown interest in the proposal of constructing the tracks, erecting power lines and building the rolling stock. Freight Rail believes electrification of the line would mean greater savings in the transport of Upper Hunter export coal to Newcastle. A final decision on the private sector proposal will be made at the end of the month.
When Private Lives was staged in Newcastle in 1985, it broke box office records. Now, scenes from that popular play have returned in Noel and Gertie, a biography of playwright Noel and actress Gertrude Lawrence.
How was it?
The world?
Yes.
Oh, highly enjoyable.
China must have been very interesting.
Very big China.
And Japan?
Very small.
And did you eat shark's fins and take your shoes off and use chopsticks and everything?
Practically everything.
Although they worked together only twice, the relationship between Noel and Gertie was famous in 1930 English theatre. Brendan Higgins and Sher Gould present an elegant and witty interpretation of their lives.
I think that they had something that you often don't. You can often find a relationship maybe twice in your life with somebody in which you have a real empathy, and I think they had that.
Although only the second musical presented this year by the Hunter Valley Theatre Company, the songs and scenes from the past are sure to be a hit with older audiences. Noel and Gertie opens tomorrow night at the Civic Playhouse.
I must go and find Sybil.
I must go and find Victor.
When Private Lives was staged in Newcastle in 1985, it broke box office records. Now, scenes from that popular play have returned in Noel and Gertie, a biography of playwright Noel and actress Gertrude Lawrence.
How was it?
The world?
Yes.
Oh, highly enjoyable.
China must have been very interesting.
Very big China.
And Japan?
Very small.
And did you eat shark's fins and take your shoes off and use chopsticks and everything?
Practically everything.
Although they worked together only twice, the relationship between Noel and Gertie was famous in 1930 English theatre. Brendan Higgins and Sher Gould present an elegant and witty interpretation of their lives.
You must have seen it by moonlight.
Yes. Moonlight can be cruelly deceptive.
I think that they had something that you often don't. You can often find a relationship maybe twice in your life with somebody in which you have a real empathy, and I think they had that.
Although only the second musical presented this year by the Hunter Valley Theatre Company, the songs and scenes from the past are sure to be a hit with older audiences. Noel and Gertie opens tomorrow night at the Civic Playhouse.
Students can concentrate in the area of foods and appliances as part of the new consumer science degree. University research shows not only do consumers need advice, but manufacturers want help in determining consumer needs for developing new products. Alternatively, students can specialise in textile and apparel technology.
It mainly arose because of needs in both industry and commerce generally. The need for people who had both technical skills with business experience, and the idea then arose to generate this into a course in its own right.
For police officers, the degree course in Justice Studies represents an expansion of the successful Associate Diploma course that has run for the past 9 years. Students can study part-time in Newcastle or at the Central Coast campus.
This is part of developments over the New South Wales and overseas for continuing police education.
Laurie Carmichael was guest speaker at this year's Harry Eddy Memorial Lecture. Entitled New Work, New Society, Mr Carmichael explained the 3 areas that must be addressed in order to make Australia competitive on the international trade market.
The first is the nature of technology, which is rather self-evident. The second is the nature of the market that industry is now required to address throughout the world. And the third are the social pressures for change inside the workplace itself.
Later, he outlined the ACTU's priorities in more detail.
Well, first of all, we're trying to propound a stimulatory industry policy, and we're arguing that with government right at the present time. We expect the government to come down with a major statement on industry during November. The second thing we're trying to do is to carry out programs of microeconomic reform at the enterprise level. By that I mean that there is a higher quality of management, higher quality of work organisation for employees, much greater levels of skill training and development, and by doing that to provide the means whereby our enterprises can make up for the deficiencies that we labour under in a world market.
How do you see the future for areas like Newcastle? Are we going to be able to change our ways fast enough to support the industries we already have here?
Well, I think people are going to have to change their ways, and that will apply on both sides of the industrial fence. Management's got to change as much as the workforce has got to change. For the workforce, we have to change the union movement itself. But I think the future will be sufficiently attractive simply on the grounds that we've got to make it so.
Presenting the annual Harry Eddy Memorial Lecture, Mr Carmichael also spoke about the technological advances needed to make Australian industry more competitive. Before the lecture, Mr Carmichael outlined the ACTU's reform priorities.
A higher quality of management, higher quality of work organisation for employees, much greater levels of skill training and development, and by doing that to provide the means whereby our enterprises can make up for the deficiencies that we labour under in a world market.
Conditions were perfect early, but by the time the finals hit the water, a stiff nor'easter had made its presence felt. Choppy wave faces made it difficult for competitors to pick up the speed needed to perform radical manoeuvres, but they were given no quarter by the judging panel.
Well, a good competitor can has to make the best of the conditions he's given, and in order to do that he performs the standard set of manoeuvres and makes the conditions look better than they actually are.
The under-15 final pitted Newcastle against Broadmeadow. The two-man teams went wave for wave for the entire 20 minutes, but often found themselves hampered by some unwelcome Boardriders. In the end, it was wave selection that made the difference, and Newcastle's Ryan Lagerston and Ben Powell triumphed over the Broadmeadow combination. In the Opens, defending champ St Francis Xavier took on Merewether, who boasted the contest's standout surfer in the form of Justin Gilbert. He earned big points for this barrel roll and finished all his waves in impeccable style. Teammate Luke Mongan was obviously inspired and he followed suit, ending up on dry sand on more than one occasion. Merewether ran away with the title and added another chapter to the area's surfing history.
Merewether's got a good reputation for surfers such as Nicky Wood. Maybe in the future they'll bring big bodyboarders. They've got a long way to go, but it's going to happen, I'm sure of it.
The federal government dropped the bombshell on the Hunter 3 weeks ago when Cabinet voted to keep the Australian Maritime Authority in Canberra. This was despite a promise made in November that Newcastle would house the new authority and the 200 people who would work there. Citing a massive cost blowout from $10 to $15 million for the move, Cabinet got cold feet on the idea. This morning, a broad delegation of leaders from the Hunter met with the Prime Minister. The group of politicians, businessmen and unionists put a bold alternative to Mr Hawke, which would still see most of the benefits flow to Newcastle.
It's that the formerly known the Federal Sea Safety Centre, the unit that conducts search and rescue, maritime search and rescue operations, stay within the Department of Transport and Communication in Canberra. That unit remain in the department in Canberra, and that the headquarters and remaining divisions of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority be established in Newcastle.
The plan would sidestep the search and rescue personnel who first opposed the move. Instead of 212 people, the Newcastle-based operation would employ about 170. It contains the cost below the original estimate of $11 million. But is the promise of a review enough to take the political heat out of the issue?
No, definitely not. We want a decision. And that's the only thing that will take the political heat out of it, a decision accepting the proposition we put forward.
What did emerge today was the way this issue has divided the state and federal arms of the Labor Party.
I'm not happy about it. I've spoken in the Parliament. I have indicated that I virtually would disown the government on the situation of assisting them in the future. I've been in Parliament a long while, and this particular issue affects my constituents. It cuts across what the State Labor Party is saying about decentralisation.
It would be fair to say the Prime Minister was surprised by this new option put to him today by the Newcastle delegation. But the question which remains unanswered is how long it will take the government to review this new proposal, and how long before Newcastle knows whether it will ever house the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. In Canberra, John Church for NBN News.
Sir Eric spoke about our troubled economy to a large gathering of the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce. He drew on his vast experience in both banking and industry to outline the causes of the downturn. He warned that a further increase in energy prices could adversely affect Australian exports, particularly metals. And he took a swipe at another threat to our vital manufacturing industry.
Regretfully, in my opinion, there's big sectors of the Australian community where they're not subject to competition. And I think those Australians have to realise they have to be prepared to change and improve their efficiencies, because in many cases it's their inputs which are cost to manufacturing. I'm talking now about water supply, power supply, transport, education. The whole community has to become world efficient.
It was September 14th when news of Canberra's broken promise to the Hunter first hit the headlines. The decision to go back on the planned relocation of the Australian Maritime Authority from Canberra to Newcastle was met with anger and disbelief. Federal Cabinet argued that the cost of relocation had blown out from $10 to $15 million. But it wasn't long before allegations surfaced of a rort by public servants, with claims that the figures had been diddled. It was against that backdrop that a delegation of Hunter leaders gathered in Parliament House today to put an alternative before Prime Minister Hawke. What the Hunter delegation told the Prime Minister makes good political sense. If you can't solve a problem, the best idea is to simply change that problem. The idea is to split the Sea Safety Centre away from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Keep the search and rescue here in Canberra, but allow the rest of the department to be set up in Newcastle.
Our delegation put a proposal to the Prime Minister for consideration, a proposal that would substantially reduce the costs of establishing the Australian Maritime Safety Authority in Newcastle. So he saw it as a positive proposal, a proposal worthy of consideration. He's undertaken to get back to us in the near future.
Instead of 212 people being employed in Newcastle, generating a disposable income of an estimated $8 million a year, this new plan would see about 170 people in the city. The sweetener to Hawke is that it contains the costs below the original estimate of $11 million, and that's using the Finance Department's own doubtful figures. The Lord Mayor supports the initiative, but warns the issue will not go away if the Hunters' compromise is turned down.
We want a decision, and that's the only thing that will take the political heat out of it, a decision accepting the proposition we put forward. But we've made the first step in that, and it's my personal view, I don't know what the other delegates think, that nothing will take the heat out of that until the decision is taken. I have indicated that I virtually would disown the government on the situation of assisting them in the future. I've been in Parliament a long while, and this particular issue affects my constituents. It cuts across what the State Labor Party is saying about decentralisation.
In many ways, it's up to the Hunters' only minister, Bob Brown, to convince his colleagues. He was cautious when asked whether they could be persuaded.
Well, you see, the Cabinet, of course, John, has a responsibility to accept prima facie the type of evidence which is brought before it. That evidence, of course, came essentially from the Department of Transport and Communications and from the Department of Finance. The Prime Minister himself made a personal commitment towards the establishment of AMSA in Newcastle. You can understand the concern which he has personally experienced as a result of a position which he believed reflected as a decision by Cabinet that they were not able to avoid.
Now the Hunter must play the waiting game while the bean counters in Canberra do their sums. It's a political face-saver for Hawke, under fire in this region from his own party. No date was given for a final decision. John Church in Canberra for Newsnight.
The for-your-man gift shop in Market Square is the latest victim of inner-city crime. After failing to lever a latch open with a piece of masonite, the intruder gained entry by smashing the glass door.
I haven't done a full check yet on everything that's gone, but it looks as though there's 4 or 5 replica samurai swords taken. There's a briefcase, there's some blankets, there's some pure wool coats from New Zealand, which are quite expensive, around the $200 mark, and some hats.
Eyewitnesses report seeing a man leaving the Market Square premises around 9:30 last night. They say he appeared intoxicated and was laden with goods. The robbery is not an isolated incident. The inner city has been the target of a number of break-and-enters, and shopkeepers are becoming increasingly nervous.
There's been, as far as I know, 4 break-ins around the Market Square area in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So yes, certainly we're a little bit up in arms about it and very concerned. My immediate neighbours are concerned, of course, yes.
Police are now investigating the wave of robberies which they say has also spilled into the Merewether Cooks Hill area.
A team of detectives are investigating these types of crime. At this stage we have had some success. We hope by the end of the week we should have a substantial clear-up.
Praised for his efforts to end the Cold War, Mr. Gorbachev is the first communist head of state to win the coveted award. However, international recognition has not silenced his critics back home.
His Nobel Prize will not help at all. I mean, I don't think people will be jubilant about that inside the Soviet Union.
Everyone will be free and will be happy and will be equal.
Blacks can now legally enjoy the country's parks, gardens and beaches, but it'll take more than new laws to wipe away decades of prejudice.